If you're in the zone of proximal development, you're pushing your skill development one increment forward. And it's one that you can actually manage. And so if you see people who are entirely stymied, we're sort of back to the cup of coffee or the coffee cup example, you want to find something they can do locally this week that would constitute at least a micro win. And you just keep, and if you talk to someone, you say, well, why don't you try cleaning up your room? Because it's a complete catastrophic nightmare. It's a good place to start. And this is often the case with people who are really demoralized and whose life is utterly chaotic. And maybe they come back later and say, well, you know, I had one client, he just had a child, and he didn't want to mess up this child, but he was living at home. He was like 35 years old. He had a child out of wedlock by accident, but he didn't want to be a useless father, and he was very afraid he was going to be. And he had good reason to. Like, he still lived at home. He lived in his high school bedroom, and it was a complete bloody mess. He was living like a 12-year-old, you know, a bad 12-year-old. And so I said, well, when was the last time that your carpet was vacuumed? And he said, well, sometimes my mother does it, but it's probably been months. I said, well, why don't you just bring the vacuum cleaner into the room and just vacuum your carpet. That'll be your task for this week. You know, and I knew that was a bigger task than you might think, because he'd been in that room for like 18 years and it was a mess. And so cleaning it up at all was a big deal. He told me that he dragged that bloody vacuum cleaner into the doorway and left it 45 degrees across the doorway and then stepped over it for the whole week. That was resistance from a psychoanalytic perspective, because he saw the monster and was paralyzed. And so what we did was we reduced the task. I said, look, you've got some drawers in your bureau. They're probably a mess. Do you have a sock drawer? Yes. I said, like, clean up one half of the sock drawer this week. That's it, just organize it. So you just keep cutting the tasks down week by week until you find the threshold for positive movement forward. And then what's cool about that too is there's a Pareto principle issue associated with it. So if you can find out where the person can start, it isn't linear progress, it's exponential progress forward. And so even if they have to start at a micro level, it doesn't really matter, because they get much better at it very, very rapidly as they accrue successes.